Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome back to another episode of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me this evening is James Fox. How are you, James?
Hey man, how's it going?
Going well. How was your holiday time?
It was good. Um, I think the best part about some of it is me and my wife like cleaning out all the crap in our house that like our kids don't play with anymore and taking it to Goodwill or throwing it away. It was awesome. We have like a clean house and people buy them way too much stuff. We don't even have to really get them anything because everybody else does. Like, and they just bring bags of stuff that they're never gonna play with. It's like, my God. So
That is always a good feeling to kind of clean out the
the
excess
purge,
muck.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Well, it's
a
like
good
we look at
feeling.
each other and we're like, they're never going to use this. See you later. Like it's gone. I don't have any issue with not hoarding things. Like I just see you later. If somebody else can use this, they can have it.
Yeah, I did a bunch of stuff around the house as well. I fixed a microwave yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you feel
that
great?
was It did feel really good.
Yeah.
I swapped out the magnetron and the diode and
Yeah.
fixed
Nice.
that microwave. It's
Well,
awesome.
you're like kind of, you're like technical with work, right? But like I don't know how to do anything. Like I'm not like a full functioning adult most of the time. So I always would tell people like if you ever see me like under like a car or something, like just call like the authorities because I'm gonna need help. Like I don't know, I'll have YouTube up. Like how do I do this? Like like
Yeah, hopefully it's still got the wheels on it if you're underneath it.
yeah, like
So, White Sox international signing of the free agents, the bonus pool. That is the first order of business tonight. We're also going to go through the Tyler Gilbert trade, the Josh Rojas signing, along with some other things. Um, so this is like one of your main things that you really dig into every year. Uh, to let some people know about this international bonus pool spending
yeah.
that we got going on.
Had some help this year. Francis Romero does a great job. Actually reached out looking to get him on just to, some insight. I think he's been challenging a little bit. Ben Badler and Jesse. Jesse Sanchez, Ben Badler have been the top two guys in this industry basically forever. Um, but like Francis Romero has a lot of contacts in the Dominican Republic. He knows a lot of the Cuban players, agents, that sort of thing. And he's got a lot of these signings. And I had reached out to him just for like some insight and then confirmed a few. So, obviously I put up our preview. It's for Patreon right now, supporters. So, if you want to read that, like it's up on the site. I think one guy that everybody kind of knew about, Cuban third baseman Alejandro Cruz. We don't need to get into him too much. I mean, it's not their typical like power or nothing signing. I think he turned 18 yesterday, so it is a teenage Cuban instead of like a middle-aged Cuban, which is good. But I mean, you could find stuff on him pretty much anywhere. MLB Pipeline, so that's their biggest signing at 200,000. One of the surprises, Yobel Rodriguez. It's a 16-year-old right-handed Cuban pitcher that was signed in December, supposedly. So I guess like David Keller's first signing, maybe it sounds like, which I think is a little bit interesting. I mean, he sounds like an interesting guy, 6'3". I think there's like projection with him where Francis kind of thought maybe he gets into the high 90s at some point, but right now he's 91 to 93 with a really good change. Um, he left Cuba as a 14-year-old. Every time I read that stuff, I'm like, oh my God, like, oh, 14 in 2022, which means, oh, he's 16. And he was pitching at the MVP Rudy Santon like academy there. So that's like a famous academy in the DR. He'll be on the White Sox DSL team. Um, and then, there's 7 other signings on there that are pretty low dollar, but still significant just because of like the pitching. I think we've talked about this before. Like the Astros really made a name for themselves doing this. Like the pitchers just don't cost very much on the international market. They're usually like 300-400,000, even if they're like the top guys. Like obviously not a Sasaki, but you know what I mean? So it doesn't mean that they like got nothing here, but it's a 9-player class at this point. They've spent 4.2 million, which means they have 2 million left in their pool, and that opens up a whole bunch of questions.
Not Roki Sasaki questions for me anyway.
No,
Unless
not
you're
well,
giving it to
not
somebody else.
for the Sox, no, but
No.
I think I kind of like I tried to put in the article like his presence in this market is important, I think, for the White Sox.
So upon digging a little bit, I found out something interesting. The Rudy Santine Academy down in the Dominican Republic, which is where Yobel Rodriguez went. Um, so every year, those guys crank out prospects that get a couple $1,000,000 usually every year.
Yeah.
Um, guys like Jose Ramirez. I don't
Wander.
want to say this too
Wander.
loud, but Wander Franco.
Yeah,
Um,
the Rays found him there when he was like a 14-year-old kid.
yeah.
That was in
Uh,
one of the books. MVP Machine, maybe one of them. There's a whole chapter on it. But go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
Jeff Passan wrote a long article about Wander
Hmm.
at that same time, or like kind of detailing his stuff when he was at that academy. And one thing I found interesting is that Rudy Santine was actually one of the whistleblowers that kind of changed all of the rules for international scouting over the last 5 years.
Yeah,
So it's just I mean he has since passed, but
that's what I was gonna say. He died right recently.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know, just some interesting
Seems
things. It'd be nice to get
seems
your
seems a
fingers in
little
there.
seems a little fishy. He died. Huh? It was like a heart attack too. No,
Well, he had a
I'm not
stroke
gonna speculate. I'm
before
sorry.
that.
That's rude.
Well, yeah, I don't think I
Eh,
mean the FBI was investigating all that stuff.
yes.
So you never know.
But yeah, no, he was like one of the names in the Dominican. And that's the thing. Like his academy is in the Dominican, but sometimes he has Venezuelan kids from Panama and like Cuban kids like in those academies in the DR, right? Like the
Yeah.
thing that I found, the other thing that's like interesting to me, and I guess I forgot about this with Ethan Salas. So the younger brother signing with the Marlins. Those kids are all Miami like kids. They all live in Miami, but they're I think what Venezuelan born, so they're allowed to sign in this marketplace instead of like going through the amateur draft. And that's how it is with this Andrew Salas, who's a shortstop that's going to the Marlins. Um, I think Ethan was the same. I just didn't remember that.
Hmm. So total, and I don't have the background of one of the right-handed pitchers, Roderick Medina. I don't
Yeah,
have his background. I don't know where he's from, but
Panama.
as of he's
Yeah,
Panamanian.
he was a member of Panama's national team, the U15 World Cup. So I I didn't say that he was the like top pitcher out of Panama, but if he is, I wouldn't be surprised.
Hmm. Okay.
Because I don't know that, but he's not really listed anywhere, and there's no other Panamanian pitchers listed.
Hmm. All right. So you've got two Cubans. You've got three from the DR. You've got the Panamanian and Medina, and then you've got three guys out of Venezuela. So at least things are kind of spread out here a little bit. We're used to just getting Cuba and
Yeah,
Venezuela mostly.
recently, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It's a little weird. Yeah, so shortstop Yordani Soto out of the Dominican Republic's getting 750,000. Know nothing about him. We're gonna have to wait till January 15th when David Keller talks. I'm guessing Badler, when he writes up, he'll have something, on these guys. But 750K is, fairly significant. So, he's like a top signing. There is a lefty, Johnny Mario from the Dominican Republic, right-hander Cesar Familia. Um, no idea if he's related to Juris Familia. But a lot of times some of these guys are. And then the Venezuelan signings are like smaller, low dollar signings.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to see them kind of spreading out a little bit here and not just signing what we're
Yeah,
used to signing. So it looks like things are kind of moving in a positive direction for what we want to see. So
maybe. I mean, one thing I'll notice, this is very likely, like, I think it's still Marco Patti's class. I think if you go, I saw a comment from somebody that basically said, like, if you go and scope out all these guys' trainers, and I haven't done that, and you go to their Instagrams and stuff like that, there's like White Sox agreements from like a year and a half to 2 years ago with some of these kids, right? So this is a Patty class, but this is the way it is when you take over midstream. I mean, you honor these commitments unless something crazy like Roki Sasaki says he wants $5 million, and then we'll get into that, right? But so yeah, I think you just honor these commitments. The one thing that's true is that they're short a little bit, which Marco Patty did often, where they would like keep money in the hopper, which is something I expect to change. Within that review, I looked over at great work over at Sox Machine that James Fegan did. He talked to David Keller. David Keller, when he spoke to Fegan, kind of I thought it was pretty noteworthy just that him and Getz both feel like this is a market that they haven't used properly, which I think we've said, which is good. They think that the academy they're building in the Dominican Republic will be a big help. They think that the fact that it's not going to be like this siloed department anymore. Like the way I see it is like Marco Patti was just kind of running the thing and probably like reporting to Kenny. And it was just like, oh yeah, those are the international guys. Like the White Sox are trying to make a concerted effort to have them talk to their R&D staff and talk to their pro scouts and talk to the, you know what I mean? So it's more of like a united front type thing. And then he also, Keller also just talked about athleticism. This is a place, a marketplace where you can get premium athleticism for really cheap. So you should do so instead of signing guys that project to be power hitting first baseman so often, right? So you've said this as much as anybody, like in the time that we've been doing this, shortstops, center fielders. You want to sign a bunch of pitchers, fine, but it should be guys that could stay up the middle in this marketplace because in free agency they're expensive and in the draft they're expensive too.
Yep. Yeah, and that's one thing that the White Sox have been generally pretty good about doing is grabbing pitching in the draft. So if they were just to go full on position player, unless they run into something special in an international market, I'd be completely fine with that personally, just judging by the results.
For sure. And so I'm always okay with like pitching on this market because it's cheaper, right? Like you could get three guys for 400,000 and if one of them pans out, like it's totally worth, you know what I mean? Like we talked about Yoiker Fallardo a ton. Ranked him, who knows what he's going to be, right? But man, that's a $400,000 signing. That's like nothing. And that's like
Yeah.
the, you know what I mean? You get pitchers for that much. So
So I'm going to move here. Doug asks, would you trade the rest of the international bonus to the team trying to get Roki Sasaki? Might get something good, or would it be better to pick up the player spurned who the team gets Roki?
yeah, I think it depends. I think it's a really, really good question. It depends on who gets him, right? Like if it's the Padres, the Dodgers, or the Cubs, can you get something really good from them for the 2 million? I think you have to weigh that, right? Do you want to get rid of all of it? Do you want to trade 1 million of it for a prospect that you like and keep the other 1 million to sign a couple more guys? These are good questions. I do think the team that ultimately signs Roki Sasaki is going to trade for money. I think that's the reason why he's waiting to sign because I think teams are going to agree with all their players on January 15th and then kind of take inventory of where they're at. And then he's going to make a decision. I don't think he's making a decision based on money. I don't think he's going to go somewhere because they can give him $6 million. I think he's just going to pick his destination and kind of take what they have left, and they'll try to get him a little bit more. That's how Otani was too.
What is it? So I know you know these rules really well, so I'm just going to ask you. I think I know the answer, but what is the percentage above a team's total pool that they can get in trade in return?
I believe they can trade for 60% of their total pool. So what is that? Like if a team, if so, the Dodgers. So we'll use the Padres as the example. They have 6.2 million. Um, so
So
what?
they'd be able to get like 4 million.
Maybe 4 million more. Yeah, something like that. But
Interesting.
but nobody can trade. I don't think anybody would trade them that much. They'd have to get it from multiple teams, obviously. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that would be
and their
multiple deals.
system is a little bit thin, obviously, right now. But I mean, who knows, right? Like I saw rumors all over Twitter about Diego Cartaya, right? Because the Dodgers just DFA'd him to make a signing. People were like, "Oh, that's how they're going to get international money." Well, first of all, they're not because that money can't be traded until the period opens on January 15th. But the idea isn't crazy, right? Like if they trade Gavin Lux to the Mariners or something for $1.5 million of international space, I'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I understand that, right?" Because you're the Dodgers, like you're getting rid of something that you deem expendable for the ability to spend your own money, like we've talked about, right? So
Yeah, especially
yeah,
after just signing Ha-Sung Kim.
that's what I mean. So I mean, like Lux, like doesn't really have any value. He's very likely going to be somewhere else. But that type of thing, regardless of who it is, like the Giants basically have their whole bonus pool spent. The Cubs have their whole bonus pool spent. and then the Dodgers and Padres each have some money left. I think it's like $1.5 million to $2 million. Trade for 2 million more, give Sasaki 4 million. I don't know, but those are kind of the things that are, I guess, going on in that marketplace. I don't think he winds up east, as we've talked about. So,
Yeah. So sticking with the international market stuff, TJ
mhm.
Johnson asks, have you guys heard anything regarding the reshaping of the scouting department, domestic and international? Are they consolidating, not truly replacing all the fired scouts' responsibilities with Keller and Silverio?
Um, so like on LinkedIn, somebody in the White Sox, I think it might have been Sox on 35th, brought this up originally, that the White Sox are hiring a international scouting coordinator, which is a different position for them. So it's like a go between David Keller and the people on the ground, essentially at the academy, which is a good thing that a lot of other people have. Yes, they're hiring more international like area scouts. I believe they're also like supposedly hiring pro scouts too, but it is more of like a united process, right? Like my guess is like Gene Watson and David Keller and these guys are like you lieutenants of Chris Getz, right? Like I think they're all in the room for everything, along with R&D. Like instead of just like, oh, what do the international guys have to say, right? And then you throw these guys into a system that you've had absolutely no input on. I think that's like one of the big changes under Getz is just like the synergy with like all of the departments like working together. So yeah, like I think we'll get those like when the media guide comes out or all of a sudden we're like, hey, look at all these scouts, and then you and I are looking up backgrounds of these people
Yeah,
who they sign, right? It's just
scrambling.
those are just
Exactly.
those are just like the types of things that like don't really get announced unless like a Bob Nightingale's buddies with somebody and they're like the White Sox hire hidden gem scout from such and such team, like whatever, right? So
Yeah, it's just some agent throwing something out somewhere to
generally,
try and drum up some business for their other clients. And like half the time, like just randomly, like I'll run into a scout at a minor
mhm.
league game. One of the White Sox pro scouting guys. So just a follow up here. Also, any idea what Phil Nevin's role is going to be in the front office, which is interesting question.
No, but I think so. I know you were against the idea of Phil Nevin manager. Does this
Manager.
bother you? Does this bother you at all or not really?
No, not at
I
all.
think I think this is fine. Like, so I actually heard good things about him when he was in PD, like with the Yankees. Um, so I don't know. Like they mentioned that he'd be scouting a little bit, like, but I don't know if that's like, Mike Shirley scouts goes and sees a guy, they really like this guy. Hey Phil, go watch this guy. Tell us what you think, right? I do think like the cynical side is okay. Tony La Russa got his choice at manager like into the org somehow, which I understand because it's the White Sox and like we're cynical. Like like it's the what I mean? Like all three of their manager finalists are now working for the organization in some capacity. But I think in this role he can't, if you think he was going to cause harm, I think this role is fine. I think it's a special assistant type thing where he's offering insight. We'll see how often we hear of him being out at affiliates. If Jeff sees him, if you see him, we'll hear about it if Phil Nevin's out and about like out at places, right? Maybe he starts doing the stuff that Tony was doing because Tony can't or doesn't want to. Tony was often at Birmingham for a week at a time and
Yeah,
just kind of like watching, observing that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I'm okay with this. I mean, he's not on the coaching staff, so
yeah, that's on my list for places to go visit this year is to go down to Birmingham for a little bit and go hang out and see a series down there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, I heard it's awesome.
yeah, just gonna kind of clean up some of these questions here before we move on. Where is it? Du-du-du-du.
And obviously, like January 15th is like the day. I think that's like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I think it's a Wednesday this year. So it's weird, like, it's like 8 o'clock in the morning comes and like all these like kids are taking pictures with their families and signing with their teams. The White Sox have typically been late with their signings, like lately. So we'll see like how soon that is. So I guess that's like my question. And then also just like with Cruz, Like, is he at the DSL all year? Is the other question. Just because he's like a little bit older. But other than that, I mean, I think we covered the White Sox class. Obviously, I'll put more stuff up on the site once we hear from like Keller and Getz on the players that they've signed.
Yep. Sorry, there's just so much going on here in the comments. Just have to go through here and make sure I'm not missing anything. Here's a question. Is there an organization that has run the international scouting department worse than the White Sox? I'm looking for hope that there is another organization that is bad or worse.
The Orioles were significantly worse prior to um, Mike Elias taking over. They would just not spend any of their bonus pool and not use the market at all. So they were worse for a long time. I mean, I think it's tough to say that the White Sox were bad at. I mean, I don't know. It's like hit or miss, right? There's high profile hits like under Marco Patti, but the strategy was flawed, very flawed. It's just kind of tough when none of these guys have matriculated to the big leagues or helped you. Like a lot of them don't even get to Double A. But I mean, like there was a Cubs blogger the other day. Like they don't do a very good job either. Like they don't get their guys up, and they have $2 to $3 million signings every season. I feel like, and those guys never like turn into anything. It's
Yeah,
just
I was just
you
thinking
know,
about the Phillies,
it's
the
just
same
tough.
thing.
Yeah,
There's just like, that you don't really see them bringing up too many guys from their international classes either. I mean, there are plenty of teams that don't seem to hit from down there.
yeah. I mean,
But,
right now Milwaukee seems really good at it. AJ Preller in San Diego's always been great. The Dodgers classes are great, but the Dodgers sign just a million athletes. Shocker, right? And then they develop them because they have the best development system in baseball.
yeah, Red Sox do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. There are some teams that are obviously above and beyond everybody else. I think that there's most of the teams that are in the middle kind of, they cast a wide net and get lucky here and there. I think there are a certain amount of teams that do a really good job at identifying that talent and then developing it to bring it to the major league level.
Well, but that's always been the issue though, is that like whether you want to call it laziness by Jerry Reinsdorf or just short-sightedness or whatever, like this is an area where he should be able to compete with everybody, right? Like in theory, right now, David Keller and Chris Getz, like they should be in the mix for the top players in the 27 class. There's no excuse not to be. Like you should be a destination for those players. Right now, you need the scouts on the ground to like tell you these guys are good, but like sometimes it comes down to you offering more money than another team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it can't be, you just like can't be afraid of it, right? Like you're not going to get premium talent in free agency, right? I think Mike Shirley has shown that he's not afraid to do it in the amateur draft. So there's no reason not to do it in the international market too, especially when the resources are finite and everybody has the same amount of money to spend.
Yeah. Are you good with the international market here? You want to move on here?
Yeah, unless somebody asks something else, like we can answer it, but there's
Well,
other stuff we have. There's other stuff we have to do.
so there was one that was here. Where is it? Just to paraphrase it, because I can't find it. There's too much stuff here. But it was a question asking about the Tyler Gilbert trade
Mm.
for Aaron Combs and the trade of Yoiker
Oh yeah, that
Fajardo.
was an early question. Yeah.
That was an early question. Yeah, it's up there somewhere. Um, but this is something that I know that you and I wanted to get into here. Now, Tyler Gilbert is 31 years old. Is just traded for a closer drafted out of Tennessee this year in Aaron Combs, who was the closer for the Cannonballers in the playoffs, who was pretty close to unhittable and completely on top of his game and looked really awesome. And Tyler Gilbert has not been that. But there has been some interesting developments with him as far as how he pitches. What are your feelings on, I guess, on the trade on the
Yeah.
surface in the beginning, then let's kind of move into a little bit more of the philosophy
Hmm.
and just the way of doing business here.
Yeah,
Your
so I was
feelings
like,
on
I
that?
guess I was just like a little surprised because it seemed unnecessary. So we come on here, every week typically, and I kind of talked about like just like creating value, right? It's what Getz is trying to do. I think it was clearly what they tried to do in the Cam Booster trade, which look, we thought that one had the potential to maybe bite him too, because we kind of like Fajardo. I don't think they're going to necessarily regret trading Aaron Combs, right? Like, whatever. Like, even if he's a reliever in the big leagues at some point, like he's a reliever in the big leagues at some point. Um, I guess I don't know. Like, you're trading for like a lefty reliever, and you're hoping that he's good for you, and then you'll trade him for something better than Aaron Combs, like in July. It's just the prioritizing. I don't know that it's weird. I was just kind of surprised, right? Like they can't sign lefty relievers, so you're trading for some. It's a lot of service time, but he's 31, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm sure Getz or Barfield is familiar with him. There's obviously um, Arsenal and what like just changes to his profile that you're going to get into here. But I guess when I first saw it, I was just like, okay, like is that like Philly asked for Aaron Combs? Did they think Combs is expendable because of all the guys they signed? Do they think there's some sort of issue with him that's going to be exposed? Like, I don't know. Like, to me, it's probably not that. They probably, they like him. They took him in the eighth round and spent $250,000. I think it's probably more so like we're stacked with pitching. Okay, fine. This is the price. Let's do it. More so than, you know, they think the walks from Tennessee are going to become an issue, like as a professional too. Right. So, I don't know. It's a little bit I mean, Gilbert has an option, but my guess is he's in the big league bullpen. I mean, he was the thing I didn't realize is how good he was um in AAA, just like it's a lot of strikeouts. Him and Booster really aren't that different, honestly. A Booster throws harder. Um and I think Gilbert's starting days are probably over, so this is a reliever. But I think a lot of people have issues when you're the worst team in the league or you're the rebuilding team and you're the one trading prospects for 31-year-olds. Uh, like, yeah, I get it, right? I think this is not about Tyler Gilbert being a middle reliever on your next good team. Um, and more so, he's good. You flip him for William Bergola, right? Because, I mean, the White Sox traded a similar guy this deadline for a prospect that's better than Combs is. So it's probably that, but I understand people that don't love it.
Yeah. So, did you happen to retweet that thing that you sent me earlier?
I believe so.
Okay. Well,
Let
if you
me
didn't, we'll
let
do it after. Do it
Yeah, let
after the
me
show here.
I can look and see. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was
So
interesting. There's a lot in it. So
there is, and it's a lot of technical stuff that
it's from Sam Horvath. Yeah.
some people may not want to read. Basically, long story short, if you're looking at Tyler and trying to figure out like what his deal is, uh, between 2022 and there was a slight adjustment in his arm angle on in 2023, but in 2024 he went down to a 17-degree angle arm slot, which is very low. It's not quite one of the Rogers brothers low, but it is low, and it allows him to have a lot of deception in his fastball. The one issue that I found when looking through all of his stats is that yes, it does help his fastball, but if you look at the movement profiles on all of his other pitches, everything went to below average other than the fastball. So my only thing here that I can think of is that Bannister thinks that that he can work on some of these pitch shapes to fix these below average pitches that are going to help him do things. I mean, like you're not supposed to be getting extra ride on your sinker. That's not supposed to be a thing. So I don't know if it's his arm slot. I don't know if it's his grips or whatever, but
Yeah.
it just seems kind of weird to me.
Based on like the Bannister history, is there something right away that you like read all that and you're like, oh, they're gonna add this. This is what they see.
Well, I mean, if you read through the thread, he kind of had like a lot of the same thoughts that I had. Like I didn't go into the numbers part of it too much, like looking at the exactly at the angle. I was just kind of looking at it more as like an average through his baseball savant page. But I would think that they would try and figure out some way of getting some more lateral movement on some of these pitches because it doesn't seem like his sweeper or his slider is moving enough,
Right.
and it doesn't seem like his sinker's sinking enough. So you're not getting that. You're not getting that higher ground ball rate if you're a sinker pitcher, which is
Yeah,
a problem.
to me it seems like the like improving the sweeper is the answer somehow. Will they talk? I don't know. Like maybe, like I don't think they've talked about any of these moves, right? They definitely haven't talked about Rojas because it's not announced, but I don't really think they've talked about this one either. But I'm sure, somebody will have James Fegan or somebody will write about it after powers that be speak. But I mean, this is the type of guy. I mean, like when thinking about Bannister, I always think about Rich Hill, right? And how like he basically was resurgence, and it's just he's always trying to get ahead of things, right? But like I'm trying to think back now what he said on the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast recently, and I'm just like, like with every pitcher he acquires, I'm like, what are they thinking here?
Every single pitcher is going to have a split finger
A
change.
splitter, I
Every
know.
single one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
So as far as the overarching philosophy here is that I think that it's not a problem yet if they continue to trade these young draft picks that seem to have like I mean it's mentioned here by Tom in the comments that Combs does not throw that hard, but the thing is he's got deception, he's got movement, and he's tough to hit, and he's got that dog in him. So you know using him out of the bullpen, you come out, you see him come out and dude's laser focused and pretty awesome. It's like taking those guys and then trading them for guys that you're trying to flip. I think that this, 100% they have to hit on these in order for it to be worth it because otherwise you are taking young controllable guys and flipping them for a guy. Yeah, okay, so he might have some control, but I mean the guy's 31 years old and we've already seen what he can do. Besides the fact that he just changed his arm slot again and became kind of a weird arm angle, which Bannister does love. So
yeah. He's pretty funky. He really can't face righties though, which is tough to do in the big leagues, obviously. But yeah, I mean, now that they have Cam Booser, him, they have our guy Frazier Ellard. I think that's it. I mean, they have Schuster, but I don't really consider him a lefty reliever. And he's more of like a bulk guy, like
yeah, he's like a piggyback
right.
slash
He's
mop up dude.
he's a starter in the bullpen, basically.
Yeah, able to take up those games where your starter gives up 8 runs in the first inning,
Right.
and can't get
Right.
out of the first.
And who knows what this means, right? Does it mean that Frazier Ellard gets moved for for a prop? Like who knows, right? Like I don't know. I mean, these are two guys that they've acquired. Schuster is a guy they've acquired. We talked about Eater and Nastrini and some of these other guys. Like Brian Bannister was not in the organization when like a lot of these guys were hired. They traded Christian Mena last year. So, and I don't know that we can say that like every move Brian Bannister makes is like good. I'm not going to go that far, but I do think there's a reason for like all of them, especially on the pitching side.
Yeah, one of the things that we wanted to get into here was the bullpen, and I don't want to do it right this second because we still want to talk about Josh Rojas here
Yeah, we can do it
before
later.
moving into that stuff. But just the sheer amount of arms that they have amassed, and it's last year at the beginning of the year there were some guys where it was questionable. We kind of wondered, you know, there was a couple of guys that we were like, okay, those guys are definitely going to be in Charlotte. But this year,
Yeah,
I
I don't know.
kind of get the feeling there's like a bunch of guys that could potentially be in Chicago Charlotte if they have
Yeah.
to, you
Yeah.
know?
I
So,
I think one of the things that's like really important, and obviously we didn't want to do all of this right now, is the sheer number of guys with options that they just have not had in the past, where you're stuck with guys on your team because you can't send them down. Like in theory, some of these guys, like like Cam Booster could pitch 4 times in a week, and they could option him and bring up somebody else. It's like the Dodgers do that the entire season, right? You just have all this optionable pitching, so you're not like stuck with 2 guys in your bullpen who are not able to go, right? It's just and the White Sox would run into these issues like frequently, I feel like.
yeah, it's nice to have actual young, controllable pitching that you can shuttle back and forth if you need to, instead of getting these, end of the line, end of the career guys that are, you're hoping to flip, but if they
Yeah.
don't do well, you have to release them because you can't put them anywhere.
Yeah, it's like you have to DFA Brian Shaw and then sign him to a minor league deal 2 days later to bring him back a week later to ultimately DFA him again. Like it's just,
Yeah,
like you don't have to do that with some of these guys.
and then you end up seeing them, seeing some of these guys and popping up for the Yankees pitching in the World Series.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So the White Sox have acquired one Josh Rojas. Uh,
Supposedly.
we haven't seen the contract yet, but friend of the
Merc,
program,
yeah.
Merck, broke this signing, and we don't know what
Mhm.
the number is, and we don't know who's getting sent down or cut from the 40-man
Yeah.
to make up for it. So
Somebody's getting DFA'd. Um, I kind of feel like it's a pitcher because they dumped what? Uh Braden Shoemake for their pitching ad, so they'll just like flip flop it. I feel like, and if you start looking at the position players, like there's not an easy call to get rid of somebody. I think if all of a sudden Oscar Colas is like traded for cash or something, like nobody should be surprised because they seem to not really like him that much, and they're discarding all of Marco Patty's players. But I mean, like I think there's a couple of names on the pitching side that are a little bit easier. We've talked a lot about Jesse Schultens. I think that's probably the most obvious one. But I
Jacob
mean,
Amaya possibly as well,
yeah,
because
like
it's just another
yeah,
infielder.
any of these relievers who they've claimed on waivers could also just be DFA'd again at some point too, right? Whether that's Penn Murphy or Marinaccio or one of these other guys.
Mm. Deloach brought up in the comments
I saw
possibility as
I
well.
saw that. I don't know because they traded for him. I think Colas would be more likely than Deloach to go. I mean, the one that I was worried about, and we talked about it off air, is like Lenine Sosa. I want them to give Lenine Sosa more of a chance this year, but like it just doesn't seem like he's a guy that they love, like regardless of his winter league stats. Like I don't think you would DFA Sosa because I think somebody might give you something for him. But if he's like an odd man out, I wouldn't be surprised. So Sosa and Jacob Amaya both out of minor league options. So they will either be on the White Sox or elsewhere.
Yeah. I would hope that it would be Jacob Amaya over Lenny Sosa. I mean, we've had this talk,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I had this talk about Lenny Sosa with many people. I feel like, you know,
Yeah.
he does so well once he's got some time. And he's finally seemed to get that time, and seems like he's kind of been doing a little bit better. But we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah. Would you feel comfortable if Brooks Baldwin is like the primary shortstop, or do you think he's better off like in a bench role? Now, look, that's going to
Uh
be Colson Montgomery's job. I just hope that it's not right away, right? So what are you doing to start the year? Because I don't necessarily see a shortstop, which is why I think they may like Amaya like a little bit more than maybe we do. Like, can you play Brooks there to start the year? You know what I mean?
you
So
could. He's good there.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not gonna, throw out there that he's Francisco Lindor, but he's pretty good fundamentally, and he's got good lateral quickness, got good hands, nice transfer on double plays. I mean, he's pretty good over there. So I wouldn't be
yeah,
sad to see him get that off the bat. But this is one of those things that you and I have been talking about, is that there's going to be just like crazy positional battles here, just the sheer amount of guys, and it's for once. it's not because they're trying to find somebody that's good enough to be in the major leagues. This is about finding the best guy to play the position because you think that they're ready to do it. Whether they can or not, we'll see.
Yeah,
But
well, and I was really hoping that Josh Rojas, like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, maybe he's the shortstop. But it doesn't seem like he's played there much, and he's been really good at third and second. This team has so many third base options though right now. And I like Rojas is clearly going to play because he had interest from the Cubs and like some other like quasi contenders. So for him to come to the Sox, my guess is they guaranteed him some playing time. My guess is this is also the biggest signing of the offseason so far. We haven't seen the money, but it's got to be more than $2 million, you would think. I
oh
mean, he was
man,
supposed to get over 4 in arbitration and got non-tendered.
yeah,
Because he had a
true.
pretty good year in Seattle. That's a tough place to hit. He didn't hit well, but defensively he was really good. He was pretty good for the first month. But I mean, 1.9 F WAR would have been the best position player on the 2024 White Sox, I think.
Yeah, it would be first or second, I think.
Right. So I'm sure he'll be all over. I think he can play some left field too. Like,
Yeah.
if Benintendi sits against the lefty. So, just another guy to add to the mix. I'm kind of curious to see how many more of these they have in them. Like how many more veteran stopgaps are you going to sign? We'll see, I guess.
I mean, it's all about who's going to push for playing time, right? Is if the guys don't show that they are ready to move up past
Yeah,
AAA, you just keep on signing them until somebody says, "Hey, look at me, I'm ready to go."
yeah. Well, then on the pitching side, I know you saw like I brought up, so they're one of the teams in the mix on Jacob Junis. I I feel like like there's probably somewhere better for him to go personally, but I don't know if this indicates that the White Sox maybe are willing to let him start and other teams aren't. I have no background on that. I just think like he could go be in a pretty good team's bullpen. So like, why would he consider here? And the Sox are definitely in the mix on him, and he's not going to be super cheap either. So that's why I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's got ties to some of the guys in the front office, and he's got a really nasty slider and put up
Yeah,
some really nice numbers last year. Granted, mostly out of the pen, but he'd made those starts at the end of the year that his whip, I think he had like a 1.2 or something like that.
I think his
Does
whip
that
was
sound
under.
right?
I think his whip was under 1 at both
It might
stops.
have been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one of the stops was like 0.89, I think, and he's got what the nasty slider. I mean, he's the type of guy where one of your pitching dev teams like Houston or one of those teams picks him up and they're just like, just throw sliders the whole time. Um, it's like when the Twins got Ryan Presley, or when the Astros got Ryan Presley from the Twins, and he like kind of sucked. And people were like, "Oh, what are they doing?" And that was like at the peak of the Astros powers. And I'm like, "Oh, you just wait." Like it was like, and then he was awesome like immediately.
Yeah. So Blank Name brings up he'd like to see my draft at second base.
Yeah, fine. He's not on the 40 man though, so I haven't even really like included him in this.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is that and the thing is he played really well at AAA. So what more does he have to prove in AAA? He already had like a 380, 390 OBP in
Yeah,
AAA.
yeah.
What does he need to go back down
He
for?
was good. And the one thing I will say, and everybody that listens to this show knows like how I feel about spring training battles. Like, I think it's mostly nonsense. I do think this is not terrible. I've heard from a lot of people that are like, just let the kids play. And like, look, this is the Future Sox podcast. You and I agree with that. But like, I want these guys to like force their way to the big leagues. So if you put a stopgap signing in every freaking position and send all these guys to Charlotte, like none of these guys are going to stand in the way of prospects that are going to be like your next really good players, right? Like if you sign a guy to play shortstop and Colson Montgomery's got an 1100 OPS at Charlotte, like that guy's not going to be the reason why you don't bring him up. The days of, depending on Oscar Colas in right field, like just because he's your next guy, like should be over. There's no reason to do that.
Yeah. I I would be completely fine with watching the White Sox version of the Norfolk Tides.
Yes.
You know, I would be completely fine with watching a team that just goes through and just puts up, 15 runs a night. That would be perfect.
Well, and
Make
there's
them force it.
there's a scenario where like Ramos, Montgomery, both catchers, Mydroth, and multiple outfielders are in Charlotte to start the year, and that team should mash.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. We'll see what happens though, I this Josh Rojas signing, I don't think it really makes a huge, it's not a big deal, it's just
Yeah.
kind of one of those things that
Mhm.
it's going to, help raise the floor I think a little bit for the major league team, and it's going to make some of these guys that are in the minors have to work a little bit harder to make it to the White Sox.
For sure. I think one thing we've done like with every pitching acquisition is like we bring up Brian Bannister, right? Do you think when they talk to Josh Rojas, we hear about Ryan Fuller?
I don't know. I don't know who to would I say
Because
credit for this. I don't know.
yeah, because I don't know that he knows him, but he did say that he wants to be a place where you know they can get guys who have been decent before back decent or better, right? Like it's a good, hopefully, place to come because like you're gonna you know what I mean? Like I think that was helpful for Slater. I think Slater kind of wanted to continue his work with Ryan Fuller. I think we heard Matt Tice talk about it. Now that was a trade. It wasn't up to him to come to the White Sox, right? So Rojas is coming to the White Sox. I would think that he at least feels like he could become closer to the best version of himself here and then ultimately end up elsewhere like with a good deal at some point, right? Like he chose the White Sox. He didn't have to.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a interesting spring training. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Did you
Lots
did
of
you
lots of
see
battles.
did you see Francis's tweet about Yoel Moncada today?
About his teams that are looking
Yeah.
at him. Well, I mean, we talked to Joe Doyle last year, and we talked about Yohan Moncada possibly getting traded there if he could stay healthy. Of course, he couldn't stay healthy, but
No.
it makes sense that they're looking at him. The
Seattle
Cubs
has no
and
offense, right? Blue
right
Jays and the
Blue
Cubs.
Jays. That was the other one.
I think it's a decent fit for the Cubs, honestly. Like if you have to start the year with Moncada at third, waiting for Matt Shaw to like force the issue, basically, or whatever. Like I mean, obviously, like Moncada could just like get hurt right away and be gone, but like that could be the case anywhere.
I mean, then they can just swap Shaw and Yohan Moncada when he needs to rehab.
Right.
So, because that's probably what's going to end up happening. Um, moving to the bullpen here. Um, is there anybody in particular that you wanted to start with? Justin Anderson. I don't remember if he's got. I did not look to see if he's got options. Do you know if Justin Anderson does?
I don't know, but it's on Fangraphs. I could look. So I think like maybe the easiest way to start is like out of all of those guys, right? Who do you feel confident saying is definitely like a member of this bullpen?
Oh man, Cam Booser, I
Probably,
guess,
right? Yeah.
because they traded for him. Um,
And Gilbert?
yeah, probably.
Those are your two lefties.
Yeah,
I think Baroa's probably in as long as he looks fine.
I would think so. Although, like what we saw from him last year when he started the season is that he was all over the place, and then he hit the midway part of the
Yeah.
season, and then he kind of leaned out a little bit. So,
I'm guessing Justin Anderson is in because they tendered him.
yeah. Oh man, this is
But then all the other guys, I mean, I feel like all the other
Varland,
yeah, Varland's probably one of the guys, I would imagine. I mean, you have your social media team writing about
Schuster.
him. So Justin Anderson has 2 minor league options. So
Okay,
so I think everybody in this bullpen does, honestly.
Penn Murphy,
Yeah, Penn Murphy
Marinaccio,
he
unless
has
they end up in
options.
Charlotte.
They both have options. So all those guys, yeah, are all optionable. And we'll see. I think it'll be a real battle. I think obviously, the Rule 5 picks probably in the bullpen, Shane Smith, I would imagine, because they're gonna want to keep him, and I bet Schuster's probably in too. So yeah, so a lot of these guys are gonna be pitching in Charlotte.
Uncle Ted brings up Iriarte. I think the thing about Iriarte, though, is that they are going to let him start until he proves that he can't.
Yeah, and he's got to be starting in Charlotte, I think,
I think that would make sense.
because I think you want him to throw a bunch of innings too, if he can.
Yeah, I think it's let him prove to you that he can't
Yeah.
start before you take it away from
Right.
him.
But I do think there like some years there's lots of talk at the beginning where it's like this pitcher's out of options, so we have to keep him. This year, I don't think that's really a thing. This year it's going to be, I'm contradicting myself, but spring training battles to like see who makes the big league bullpen.
Yeah, and like the thing about pitching battles in Arizona is that you get that Magnus effect
Yeah.
where it's like nothing wants to move like it's
Yeah,
going
for
to when
sure.
it hits humidity. So it's like who the heck knows what's going to happen, you know?
Well, then I think they will have NRIs too. Well, we have the Dan Altavia or whatever is one of them. He throws pretty hard, I think. Um,
Do you think we're going to break last year's record?
oh, I don't think so. Like
I think it was like 73 or something
where
at
they
the
had
end
so, but I
count.
mean, but you never know, right? Like if you're the White Sox and you're sitting there like late February and there's all these vets that don't have deals, and you're Chris Getz and you're like, I got $1 million for you. Like that's fine. I mean, it seems like the Sox just like kind of did that last year with a bunch of guys where they're just like, all right, well, tell me if your market doesn't pick up. We got a spot for you here, right? I mean, they signed Mike Moustakas last year. And that
Ugh,
was the end. That's how you know it's the end when
man,
you can't make the 2024 White Sox.
man, that was something. So I'm gonna Uncle Ted. You say that Iriarte is a two pitch pitcher. I'm gonna disagree with you. His changeup's pretty is it's getting there. You got to give him time, man. Um,
Leisure. Wolf asked about Leisure.
yeah,
I don't know how they feel about Jordan Leisure because, like, Brian Bannister wasn't in the organization when they traded for him. Leisure had good moments in the big leagues, and he also had some rookie moments. I think they would love for him to be in their bullpen, but he's not going to get handed one of the 8 spots.
no, I think he's gonna have to show out in spring training. You know, his command's gonna have to be good, which is that was the thing that he did not have when he was doing badly, is that he was leaving everything middle. It wasn't that he wasn't throwing strikes; he was still throwing strikes. They were just right in the middle of the strike zone and getting hit very hard.
TJ Johnson has a good question.
This is a thing that I am very scared
Monitoring,
about.
yes.
So TJ Johnson says, could they end up losing Sergio Santos in Birmingham?
Mhm.
Or is promotion to Charlotte likely? Also, any thoughts on the hiring of Tyler Coolbaugh, reported by Kendall Rogers? Is that a Ryan Geller hire? I don't know who. I mean, his dad used to be the hitting coach for the White Sox. So I don't know if it was necessarily that hire. He was probably familiar with the team through that whole thing. Um,
Yeah, I need to see
any thoughts?
I need to see the role. Like, if you would have told me that Tyler Coolbaugh was hired as their minor league hitting coordinator, I would have been like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." But they have one of those. So, like, is he going to be like a rover, like in the role of who's our buddy that left and went to the Mets?
Devin D.
Yeah,
No, I
Devin
can't.
DeYoung. Yeah,
Yeah,
like a role similar to that, right? Like, is he a roving guy? Is he just kind of Fuller's assistant? Like, I don't think we really know. I mean, they plucked him from BYU, so my guess is he has like a real role of some kind. His dad had, there's big league coaching experience quite a bit. So yeah, that's just another interesting hire. We just don't know what some of these people are doing.
yeah, re-losing Sergio Santos. That has been a fear of mine since you know since the end of last year. Is that
Yeah.
we don't know where he's going to end up. I mean, I'm hoping that he ends up in Charlotte. I do not want to lose him. That said, I mean, I do like the Will Venable hire, so I'm not angry that he didn't get what you would consider real consideration on being the major league manager. But at the same time, like I wasn't necessarily sure that I thought that he was ready for that. So I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
That is
Does he
the
does
line
he
that you walk.
does he want to be the Charlotte manager? Like, does that help him at all? I don't really know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, my guess is like Getz hired him. My guess is he's staying, like, unless he was going to get a big league job or he went to an org where he thinks because I don't think him going to somebody else's organization gives him a better shot at being a big league manager than him staying in the White Sox organization. But I just like I don't know what the next move is for him.
I mean, he's going to have a fairly decent team if he does go to Charlotte. If he stays in Birmingham, he's going to have. I kind of wonder what the offense is going to be like in the first half in Birmingham, just
Yeah,
because we know what's coming from. What we knew what Winston Salem had last year, and they were a little bit short on offensive production there.
yeah,
So, what is he going to have coming into Birmingham? Because you know that a bunch of the guys that were in Birmingham are going to end up in Charlotte. So that's my guess is that that's where he ends up.
yeah. I think there is a possibility that a little bit into the minor league season though, there's a chance that the Birmingham rotation has Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Grant Taylor in it. So
Yeah, I
that's
mean that's
that's
going to be
that's
awesome.
fun. Like, yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
I just don't know how many runs they're going to score.
I
That's
know.
that's my question.
Yeah, and they're still at a kind of a weird spot where there's a lot of guys that belong in Winston Salem and not in Double A, and some of these guys are going to have to go to Double A.
Yep. So, oh,
I like,
you
yeah, that one.
do you have thoughts on Diego Cartaya being DFA? Do you think that the White Sox should take a
No,
look at him? I mean,
I just I don't think there's anywhere for him to play. Like you have to keep him on your 40 man. You're not going to play him over Teal or Caro, and you're probably not going to send him to Double A. And he's not good at so like somebody should take it. Like the Marlins should go get him right now, right? And put him in Triple A and see if he gets some of the prospect shine back. I think the Dodgers are kind of like your Yankee theory a little bit to me right now. This is like a prospect industrial complex type of thing where these guys are just super overrated and they always trade the ones that they should trade and keep the ones that they should keep. And like, we shouldn't be surprised when some of their top 50 prospects just flame out and turn into nothing.
the majority. I mean, it's the same for everybody, but I mean, they do have more hits than not. So that's why they get that. They get that sheen on them. But like my thing is like the Yankees. Like, how often do you see their prospects flame out? You
Yeah,
know, and
always.
I'm sitting here making
Yeah.
a video of Wickelman Gonzalez just watching Spencer Jones just whiffing straight to fastballs over and over
Yeah,
again. I'm like, what are we doing here?
like you watched Miguel Vargas play baseball. That guy was awesome in the minors.
He was, yeah.
And like Diego Cartaya got to the high minors and just can't hit. Now, if he can catch, okay, because catchers just stink. They're like really bad. And we've kind of seen this with catchers where like Joey Bard sucks and now he's like the Pirates starter after the Pirates spent the number one pick on a catcher who probably stinks. Like it's just the whole thing is like crazy.
Oh, got Max, and Uncle Ted are fighting in the
Oh,
comments
I
now
like it. Yeah,
over
Spencer.
Spencer Jones.
I'm with Max.
I am also with Max. Are you? You got anything else interesting for this episode
I
here?
don't think so. I think we're on DFA watch, and I don't think we're gonna get any Sasaki news. Free agency's rolling along, but there's some big guys still out there. I think Alex Bregman is the latest Boris client that was looking for too much money and now might be stuck a little bit, going somewhere he doesn't want to go. Anthony Santander, we've talked about pretty frequently. I mean, it's a guy with a bunch of bombs and a 300 on base percentage. I'm not that surprised that nobody wants to give him $80 million and give up a second round pick to do so.
Yeah, it's he's asking for way too much for his value. I mean, he not a bad baseball player, but asking a team to give up their
Yeah.
second round pick for just to sign him
Yeah.
is
Well, no, and he can help somebody, but like even like Bregman has like cratered offensively. You're gonna give that guy $200 million right now? That's what
I
I
am
mean.
not.
Like, no, I know that. I'm just like it for a lot of teams, it doesn't make sense. Like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, so unless there's some crazy signing here, um, we'll probably see you guys next Sunday. Is my guess. I don't think
Yeah, we'll
that
be back next Sunday for sure. Yeah.
Yes, unless Roki Sasaki signs here, and then
Yeah.
we will be back with another pop up episode, which
Or
would
if
be
if if
awesome.
Lenny Sosa gets DFA'd, we'll pop on and scream about it.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah.
All right, so you're good.
All good.
All right. You have been watching/listening to the Future Sox podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that you can find us every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube and the Purple app. You can find this podcast along with all of our written content at futuresox.net, including James' recent international uh,
Preview.
budgetary preview. Yes. If you are looking for White Sox prospect highlights, you can find them on X at FutureSox, and now also here on our YouTube channel. If you love the content and want to support us here at FutureSox, there is a link to our Patreon on our channel description and at futuresox.net. You can also toss up a super chat on our YouTube stream, which would be super. Also, don't forget to like this stream and subscribe with notifications so you know when we're going live while helping us in the World Wide Web algorithms. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at James Fox 917. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for listening and commenting in the chat. You guys drive this community. We appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for hanging out. You're the best. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good night.